Don't ask?
Let's get on with it.
A little
Ow, Frosty. It's only a flesh wound.
The rules are simple. You're a wizard player. Only use units that cast spells. And by spells, I mean like lightning bolts, not just nets or whatever. Summoned and raised units are allowed, for example, spirit wolves or skeletons, cause otherwise necromancers will be useless for like the third run in a row. Starting defensive towers are allowed because some of the attacks come really early, but subsequent towers must all be magical. A run will be done on hard because magic always has a price. The young Thrall has dreams of demons and destruction. Urged on by a mysterious sorcerer, he follows him through the woods. Unfortunately, his only companions are these non-magical grunts, so he meets the wizard alone. The wizard, named Medivh, reveals that the dreams are visions of the future. The Burning Legion is returning. Who are the Burning Legion? Demons. Thrall must head west to Kalimdor, but first he must gather the Horde. To progress, he has to recruit these non-magical grunts who cannot aid him against the humans. Discovering his friend Grom is imprisoned, he fights on alone. Well, not alone, he actually has these two shaman buddies, but given their damage output, he may as well be. Nevertheless, he frees Grom and the Horde heads west. There's technically more missions to the prologue that were cut out, but given how long departures took, let's just say we magicked past them and move on. The kingdom of Lordaeron faces an orc uprising and a plague of sorts. Medivh tries to convince them to sail west to no avail.
I failed humanity once before, and I will not do so again.
I like your funny words, Magic Man.
In the meantime, paladins Uther and Arthas are sent to stop the orcs. The nearby village of Stratholme is threatened by the orc raiders. While Uther goes after the orc base, Arthas is charged with saving the villagers. Unfortunately, Arthas' only companions are these non-magical footmen, so he proceeds alone. Thankfully, he has access to a shield of divinity. Have I mentioned how odd it is to have a spell that just makes you invincible? Anyways, after an hour of smacking his foes with impunity, Arthas defeats the Slave Master and moves on. Negotiations with the orcs do not go as planned, so Arthas is sent to take them out. He's still alone in this mission, but at least Uther protects the base while he's gone. It turns out the orcs are sacrificing people to summon demons. Very magical. But so is bashing people with a hammer. Arthas defeats the Blade Master, but the threat of demons lingers in his mind. Medivh once again tries to get the Wizards of Dalaran to sail west, but sailing isn't magical. While the orcs are defeated, the plague continues to spread, so Arthas meets with Sorceress and possible Dreadlord Jaina to investigate. Along the way, they meet priests who heal with sparkles. Very magical. They discover the plague is being spread to local granaries by a necromancer named Kel'Thuzad. Arthas and Jaina head to Andorra, which is currently under attack by the undead. After banging their heads on the enemy base for an hour, they use the expert magical technique of running away, allowing them to catch up to Kel'Thuzad. As it turns out, the grain from Andorra has already been corrupted, and the cult's master is revealed to be the dreadlord named Mal'Ganis. After felling an army of abominations, the heroes slay the necromancer. At Arthglen, the heroes discover that the town is under siege by the dead. Jaina heads off to warn Uther, while Arthas stays behind to lead the defense. Unfortunately, the grain from Andorra has already been distributed, causing many villagers to become undead. To aid with defense, Arthas deploys sorceresses who make things slow. Very magical. The dead send another caravan with infected grain to the outlying villages, forcing Arthas to sally forth and destroy them. Unfortunately, the dead are too numerous, with their powerful lich easily crushing the meager human defenses. So Arthas resorts to the forbidden magical technique of lowering the difficulty, allowing him to hold out until Uther arrives. Despite the warnings of Medivh, Arthas heads for Mal'Ganis at Stratholme. It's too late for the people of Stratholme, who've all been infected. Arthas resolves to purge the city, but Uther and Jaina are killjoys who think that raising cities is wrong. Yet unless the paladin acts, the dead will claim more victims. It is here that he faces Mal'Ganis, who makes folks sleepy. very magical. Fortunately, Arthas has the Invincible spell, allowing him to magically smack the Dreadlord into timeout. At one point, Mal'Ganis stops moving, perhaps a freezing spell of some kind? Not sure who cast it. Nevertheless, Arthas destroys Stratholme, and Mal'Ganis bats off to Northrend. While Medivh convinces Jaina to sail to Kalimdor, Arthas heads for Northrend, where he meets with Muradin. The dwarf asks him to save his men, but none of them are sorcerers, so to the afterlife they go. After gathering a force of priests and sorceresses, the heroes exercise Mal'Ganis' base. The king tries recalling the expedition, but he fails to use an amulet, so they have to get home the non-magical way. To prevent his men from failing the challenge run, Arthas aims to destroy their ships. With Muradin and these magical mercs, they fight through the undead and sink each ship. Unlike his father, Arthas does remember his amulet, allowing him to bypass the enemy defenses. After sinking the ships, Arthas pulls a magic trick and betrays the mercenaries who fought for him. Unfortunately, the undead surround Arthas' camp. Alongside Muradin, he seeks the enchanted rune blade Frostmourne. In the meantime, the priests and sorceresses get repeatedly punched in the face to stall. Now, one might object to Arthas using these mundane towers to hold, but as one can see,
The towers are spontaneously generating arrows with precision accuracy. The uninitiated may argue these arrows come from the archers within said towers. But do we see said archers? I rest my case.
Anywho, Muradin discovers that the enchantment on the blade called Frostmourne is cursed. Not exactly a twist, but magical nonetheless. Muradin urges Arthas to bring his men home, but without an amulet of recall, this is impossible. So Arthas takes the sword and uses the expert magical technique called Leaving Your Friend to Die, with a powerful chaos magic of Frostmourne, which disappears in subsequent missions. It's always weird to me. Arthas proceeds to bang his head against Mal'Ganis' forces repeatedly. To stem the flow of enemy reinforcements, he targets the main production structures of Mal'Ganis' base, allowing him to slowly whittle away at the dead. Eventually, he slays Mal'Ganis, but falls victim to the sword's power. He has saved his kingdom at the cost of his soul.
Nothing bad ever happens to the Kennedys!
In saving his kingdom, Arthas is granted it just enough time to be raised by his own hand. Another dreadlord named Tichondrius reveals that the whole journey was a plan to forge Arthas as the champion of the undead, and their leader, the Lich King. Arthas is ordered to seek out the Cult of the Damned. He gets access to useless ghouls who can only cannibalize things, but cannibalism is pretty mundane, so he goes it alone. He does debate briefly on using the Shade, but it has no active spells, so it's a no-go. The only upside to his non-magical allies is since they're completely useless for combat, he can eat them using Death Pact for extra health. After gathering enough cultists, he continues to Kel'Thuzad's burial site. The cult brings in meat wagons, but unfortunately for Arthas, they do not do the magic, so he goes it alone. Using the expert magical technique of fleeing his problems, he slowly weakens the enemy with Death Coil. The Paladin's a bit more problematic, but after exhausting his energy, he goes down no problem. Afterwards, Arthas gets access to magical spirit towers in the Halls of the Dead. This allows him to use the expert magical technique of tower defense. Now, one might object to using spirit towers since they do not cast spells. However, they are, in fact, the spells themselves summoned by the very magical acolytes. Anywho, by luring the enemy paladins and knights into his defenses, he easily mops up the initial foes. Unfortunately, the paladins have spells of their own. For instance, the magical spell of not letting me build structures near them. So using the expert magical technique of sneaking an acolyte by Uther, I summon a trap right next to him, allowing me to catch him by surprise and send him straight to the afterlife. Arthas heads for Quel'Thalas, the realm of the High Elves, to use their power to resurrect Kel'Thuzad. Supposedly, it's because the necromancer was super powerful and thus cannot be raised through regular means. Now, where all that power was during his fight with Arthas, we may never know. Anywho, to aid in the corruption of this land, Arthas gains access to regular necromancers who can raise skeletons from the dead, and do some other spells that might be useful too. His main opponent in the realm is Sylvanas Windrunner, who has the unique adaptation of poison arrows. Of course, when one's opponents are literal skeletons, their effectiveness leaves much to be desired. Eventually, Arthas breaks down the first elf gate and proceeds. Sylvanas reveals her own magic trick, Kaboom the Bridge. While the undead give Arthas crypt fiends to deal with the air forces, webs aren't magical, so Arthas and the necromancers advance alone. There are goblin zeppelins nearby, but zeppelins aren't magical, so the dead use necromancy to raise the bridge and attack Sylvanas' base, where there is a functional waygate. Very magical. The struggle across the islands is fierce, as the elves send repeated aerial attacks against the hapless necromancers and spirit towers. But after a tough fight, the dead overrun all 3 islands and acquire the key to enter the second elf gate. Unfortunately, there's no way gates or bridges to raise, so just pretend that Arthas uses that ice bridge spell from Reforged to pass.
Trust me.
The way to Silvermoon is open. Well, mostly open. Sylvanas is still around. Rather than use town portal scrolls or amulets of recall to teleport herself or her messengers to the city, she sends them unescorted down undefended roads. Not very magical.
Where'd you study tactics, girl?
To intercept them, Arthas gains access to gargoyles, which can transmute themselves into stony statues. Very magical. With a force of gargoyles and necromancers, Arthas overwhelms the ranger base and strikes Sylvanas down. Using the expert magical technique of raising one's opponent from the dead so they can backstab you later, Arthas brings Sylvanas and the Banshees into the fold. They possess people, which is definitely magical. With the way open, Arthas overruns the city and slays the Guardians of the Sunwell, allowing him to resurrect Kel'Thuzad. Kel'Thuzad reveals that the Scourge serve the Burning Legion, an army of demons that conquer worlds. The Legion wants to weaken the realm's kingdoms, while the Scourge wish to break free from them. For now, the dead must play along. Kel'Thuzad must summon the demon lord Archimonde to the planet, but to get the instructions he must commune with him at a functional demon gate. The gate itself is under guard by several orc champions. While Kel'Thuzad brings in frostworms, they do not cast spells, so gargoyle necromancer it is. Thankfully, Kel'Thuzad himself is more than enough to advance. He grants ice armor to allies, freezes enemies, and can decay entire areas with his power. Very magical. While the enemy brings dragons of their own, with the expert magical technique of no go, you slow, the dead secure the gate and are instructed to take the magical city of Dalaran. At the city, Archmage Antonidas conveniently reveals his magic trick of anti-dead force fields. Welcome, Prince Arthas. How fares your noble father, Lord Antonidas? More like Antisnidas. We prepared for your coming, Arthas. I shall now proceed to tell you exactly how we prepared in order to give Kel'Thuzad ideas on how to counter it.
Yes, that sounds logical.
Evidently, master magicians are not master tacticians. The city's shields are powered by 3 archmages, thus the best solution is murder. Arthas and Kel'Thuzad take out the first one with a little death coil and frost nova action. To push the second, they gather a force of necromancers, gargoyles, as well as golems which can apparently throw magic rocks. The second archmage is even easier, as he decided to forgo having a proper security detail, allowing the dynamic duo to assassinate him as well. And finally, after pushing past the second base, Arthas and Kel'Thuzad bring down Antonidas. The time to summon has come. Arthas must protect Kel'Thuzad while he calls Lord Archimonde to the planet. In the meantime, the remnants of Dalaran's forces will continuously attack the base with all manner of arcane spells, including helicopters, guns, and bombs. Arthas' initial defense plan is to create lines of spirit towers and support them with a mix of gargoyles and necromancers, but gargoyles are apparently really bad on this mission, so the new plan is to stick to mass necromancers. They can cripple enemy air units and turn Dalaran's armies against them as skeletons. To counter enemy spellcasters, Kel'Thuzad deploys Fellhounds, which burn through their magic. He also summons Infernals, which are unaffected by Dalaran's wizards. Now, one might object to using Infernals since they do not cast spells, but one could argue that since Kel'Thuzad summons them, they are in fact the spells themselves. Even with these weapons, the enemy's final assault completely breaks Arthas' lines, but Kel'Thuzad finishes the summoning and Archimonde reduces Dalaran to dust. Very magical. In the meantime, the orcs have reached the shores of Kalimdor, but were separated during a storm, as Thrall is going to be the only spellcaster for the next few missions.
It'll be fun!
Direct combat quickly proves unfeasible. Thrall simply lacks the power to defeat his foes quickly, and the lack of healers makes level grinding terrible. Eventually he does meet with Cairn, the leader of the Tauren. They're at war with the Centaurs, who attack Cairn's village. But with Thrall's aid, they proceed to get destroyed. So using the expert magical technique called lowering the difficulty, Thrall proceeds to still get his butt whooped. Thus he resorts to the forbidden magical spell called skipping the mission. Alright, fine, I went back and beat it legitimately, still kept it on normal though, I'm not that crazy. The winning spell is in fact running away from your problems. Garen needs help getting north, where an oracle is waiting to tell Thrall his future, while Garen's warriors can hold the centaurs one-on-one. The long journey slowly wears them down. The only real consolation is that due to the forbidden magical technique of playing the missions out of order, Thrall starts with his items from the Fellowship Challenge, including these healing wards. To reach the destination, the caravan must pass 3 healing fountains while under constant threat from centaur raids. With the expert spell of Spirit Wolves, they proceed to get destroyed, even on normal, so Thrall uses the forbidden spell again to skip the mission. Yes, I went back and finished this legitimately as well. Siege of the towers with Spirit Wolves make sure the Tauren focus on defending the Kodo beasts. Garen calls down some earth magic, allowing him to destroy the remaining centaurs. After trekking through the desert, Thrall comes across Grom fighting humans. Turns out that Jaina has led her forces to Kalimdor as well. He orders the Blade Master not to harm the humans, but peace isn't magical.
I want problems, always!
While his workers summon a base, Thrall rushes to buy airships before Grom starts a war. To aid in his adventure, he brings the healing wards from earlier adventures. This was recorded before I redid the Long March, so I still have the 6 wards from the Fellowship Challenge. With wards and lightning, he proceeds to get pummeled. So with the expert magical spell of lowering the difficulty, he fells the Harpies and gets the transports just as Grom begins attacking the humans. Back to Horde for the rest of the run. For his warmongering, Grom is sent to the forests of Ashenvale with orders to build a new settlement for the Horde. Unfortunately, deforestation isn't magical, so the Night Elves attack. To counter their air forces, Grom deploys shamans who can shoot lightning. Sadly, they aren't very good at their jobs, but the enemy has developed the unique adaptation of destroying one structure and leaving. Okay. The goal is to acquire 15,000 lumber, which, as the orcs, takes forever, so with the expert magic spell called Chopping Big Tree, he acquires lumber from the Trees of Life. He does manage to destroy the base to the southwest, but the northern bases are too well defended, so using the expert magical technique of ignoring one's problems, he focuses down the last Tree of Life, obtaining enough wood before his base is overrun. The Night Elf demigod Cenarius is, to put it mildly, very unhappy about the orcs chopping trees, so he brings the forest back to life and leads an offensive against the Greenskins. Can I say that? Is Greenskin offensive? Sorry to any orcs in the audience. Anywho, Grom gets access to witch doctors who can place healing wards. His shamans also get access to Bloodlust, which boosts strength. Together they proceed to get destroyed. So rule number 3 comes into effect, allowing Grom to just barely hold on. His witch doctors report a well to the north with great power. While he leaves half his army at home, a small band of spellcasters joins him as he heads out. Turns out the well is demonic in nature, but since demon blood is very magical, he drinks and gains access to fell magic. This changes the shamans into fell warlocks, granting them fire and slowing spells. With these new weapons, Grom counterattacks the Night Elves, luring out Cenarius and striking him down. Unfortunately, the demon blood was a trap set by the demon Manaroth, allowing him to seize control of the orcs once again. Very magical. Meanwhile, Thrall and Cairn reach the base of Stone Talon Peak, which is currently held by Jaina's forces. After purifying a fountain and beating up some harpies, the combined force of shamans and witch doctors purify the area of human intruders, gaining access to the peak. Inside the peak, Thrall and Cairn split up. Thrall has access to a shaman and a witch doctor, but to keep them alive, he does most of the casting with spirit wolves. They encounter the humans, who try pulling magic tricks with sheep, but Thrall easily sees through it. After beating a dragon, they gain the heart of Ajun, allowing them to open a barrier to the oracle. To cross the chasm, they need a gemstone near Cairn. Since the other Tauren lack spells, Cairn is the only spellcaster in his segment. However, he easily sweeps aside the humans and ancient dead with earth magic, allowing him to obtain the magic stone and reunite with Thrall. They encounter Jaina further in, but Medivh reveals his own magic trick: friendship. To defeat the demon invasion and free the Warsong clan, Thrall and Jaina must work together. With the Alliance, Thrall's forces aim to free Grom from demonic influence. Unfortunately, the Warsong clan has access to both Fell Orcs and Infernals, both of which have powerful chaos magic. Pushing through the Warsong lines is difficult, especially since the humans constantly need assistance. So, using the expert tactic of ignoring his problems, Thrall lets his base fall and lets Jaina's forces get punched in the face. This allows the Horde to push through the Warsong defenses. Grom reveals that the Orcs willingly let the demons control them for power. Thrall reveals he has a Pokeball, allowing him to capture Grom with ease. They then rush home, allowing Jaina to purify the warrior. He and Thrall head for Manaroth and defeat him at the cost of Grom's life. Very magical. While the demonic threat has seemingly been thwarted, the Alliance and Horde continue scouring the land for stragglers. The Night Elves, unhappy at the death of Cenarius, plan to expel them from Ashenvale permanently. The Moon Priestess Tyrande aims to destroy the nearby enemy base, which is under the command of a paladin. She has access to moon wells with magic healing water, and archers who can shadow meld to become invisible. Very magical. With her army, she storms the enemy stronghold and slays the paladin. Unfortunately, the demons pull their own magic trick, dropping in to destroy the weakened defenders. As it turns out, the Burning Legion have returned with the Scourge to finish the job. With the expert magical tactic of standing still, Tyrande evades Archimonde. To gain extra experience, she performs magic juggling to slay some Doom Guards. Avoiding the warring factions, she reunites with archers and huntresses, who can both shadow melt. Huntresses can also summon spirit owls. Very magical. While daytime arrives, she uses the expert magical technique of ignoring her problems, rushing past the undead and breaking down the gate to reunite with her forces. To fight the undead, Tyrande aims to awaken the Archdruid Fury and Stormrage. Unfortunately, the undead are eating their way to his resting place, and the path to him is blocked by an orc base. With aid from dryads who can cancel out enemy spells, and ancient protectors who can uproot and move unlike normal trees, she proceeds to get her butt kicked. A lot. So using the expert tactic of ignoring her problem, she sneaks a number of troops by the orcs and brings down the Guardians, allowing her to sound the horn of Cenarius and awaken Furion. Furion alone is not enough to stop the demons. The next target is the burrowed dens of the Talon Druids, which is caught between the warring intruders and undead. Furion adds extra tree power to the army by converting the forest into treants. Very magical. While gold is sparse in the area with the expert magical spell of moving trees, Furion and Tyrande eventually break open the nearby human stronghold, but get stalled in this annoying haunted forest. Why is this a thing? Anywho, the gang runs into satyrs, corrupted night elves who are kinda rocking the demon look, not gonna lie. After healing the forest of corruption, the night elves raise the satyr base and awaken the Talon Druids. The next target is the Claw Druids, who are deep underground. Unfortunately, the area is swarming with corrupted wildlife and the Watchers, guardians of the dens. After discovering the prison holding Illidan, Furion's brother who made a second well of magic and massacred his people when they tried to stop him, Tyrande decides now is a good time to free him. A demon hunter is indeed very magical. While she heads into the cells, Furion heads for the Claw Druids. Unfortunately, they seem to have become very unfriendly. Using the Talon Druids' cyclone spells to immobilize them, Furion makes it into the caverns and sounds the horn of Cenarius, which shakes them out of their rage. Very magical. In the meantime, Tyrande magically massacres the Watchers for doing their job. After defeating an Archdruid, she frees Illidan, much to Furion's chagrin. At Arthas' suggestion, Illidan goes after the Skull of Gul'dan to gain that sweet, sweet demon power. To aid him, he gets the Claw Druids, who can heal and turn into bears. Very magical. After raising the enemy bases, Illidan reaches the skull and becomes jacked on magic demon steroids. This allows him to go after the leader of the undead, Tychondrius, and defeat him. For his heroic deeds, Illidan is banished because demons are bad. This is it. The final battle approaches. But he finally does away with the smoke and curtains, revealing his plan for the Outlanders and Night Elves to stop the Legion together. To this end, the plan is simple. The Alliance and Horde will delay the demons while Furion prepares a trap at the World Tree. In the meantime, Tyrande must support her allies with her army. Despite having access to nearly the entire Night Elf arsenal, the battle is by no means easy. Archimonde deploys every magic trick in the book. Mass necromancers, frenzied abominations, armies of meat wagons, a lich, a pit lord, and this annoying dreadlord who keeps putting the heroes to sleep. I hate him! Anywho, the initial army of spellcasters is a varied force of archers, huntresses, dryads, claw druids, and talon druids. But diversity is overrated. After failing the mission for 6 hours straight and consulting with ancient tomes, Tyrande comes up with a winning strategy. Furion tanks early attacks using tranquility, while mass dryads deal with the dead. Due to spell immunity, they're the perfect counter for Archimonde's magicians. Whenever mass frostworms hit, Tyrande uses Starfall to bring them down. They hold the Alliance base until the 30-minute mark, when they're forced to retreat to the second line. This allows the next phase of the plan. Landmines. Now, one might object to using mines in a magic run, but as you can clearly see, Tyrande is summoning the mines onto the battlefield. Sounds pretty arcane to me. With the line of ancient protectors and shamans with bloodlust, the defenders hold until 2/3 of the mission. This is the true magic taste. On a hill with a healing fountain and countless protectors, the heroes desperately cast whatever they can to delay the enemy. The biggest threat is the Dreadlord, who easily disables the heroes with the sleep ability. However, after focusing the Batster down, the line of trees delays the dead long enough for Furion's trap to work.
Are there none left to stand against the Legion? If I had known that this mortal resistance would be so weak, I would have launched this invasion centuries ago. I've had fun scouring your wretched nations from the world.
I want to apologize.
So can you beat Reign of Chaos with magic only? Almost. Both prologue missions can be done with magic men only. About 7 alliance missions can be done with magic users only on hard. 8 if we count March of the Scourge, where I lowered the difficulty, and 9 if we count Frostmourne, where I had to use the starting guard towers for defense. 7 of the undead missions can be done with magic users only. Key of the Three Moons forces me to bring Arthas to the final island with an airship, which isn't very magical. 3 out of 8 orc missions can be done with magic users only. 6 if we count the first 3 missions where I had to lower the difficulty because early Thrall sucks. 7 if we count Hunter of Shadows where I had to use the starting watchtowers for the first attack. Where Wyvern's Dare forces me to bring the heroes to the final base with an airship, which isn't very magical. And finally, all 7 Night Elf missions can be done with magic users only. Thus, the total at its most generous is 32 out of 34 missions that can be mostly done with magic. 94%. Next vid will be the Frozen Throne one, but otherwise, it's voting time again. What do you want afterwards? Tiberium Wars with no Tiberium? Something Dawn of War related? Give me ideas for that one. Or maybe something else. You decide. Remember, Patronus, I know this was already used, I'm running out of P-words that sound like Patreon. Sign up for early access, ad-free videos, and updates. Shoutouts to Time, Cladus Marino, Abby Accurate, Jen Tuong, Michael Phillips, and Mike Pierce for supporting the channel. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, and summon landmines to defeat eldritch demonic forces.